Detroit Homecoming has been made possible by the William Davidson Foundation, stimulating innovation, developing leadership, sustaining valuable programming, and tackling critical problems in 4 focus areas: Jewish life, economic vitality, cultural and civic vitality, and education. And by the Ford Foundation. We believe in the inherent dignity of all people and are guided by a vision of social justice, a world in which all individuals, communities, and peoples work toward the protection and full expression of their human rights.
Good afternoon, everyone, and for those of you who are coming back to Detroit, welcome home. I'm Stephen Henderson, and I'm here with a good friend of mine from college, from the University of Michigan, Glynn Washington, who is the founder and host of Snap Judgement. Let's give Glynn a nice welcome home. All right, so Glynn, I have to say up front, in college, when we knew each other,
yes,
if someone had asked me, what will Glynn be doing in 30 years?
Jail.
Jail might have been on the list. Lawyer would have maybe been on the list. But you know, host of this incredibly innovative storytelling program. I don't think I would have ever guessed that. It would not have been a thing that would have occurred to me. So tell us how you got to that place from where we were at U of M, and then of course from here in Detroit before it.
Sure. I mean, if you haven't heard of Snap Judgement, Snap's it's a show that's on public radio. It's about 400 stations nationwide, and it's downloaded 2 million times a month. And it's a storytelling show. It's sort of like This American Life, with a lot more brown people.
With more attitude.
Early on, the idea, my background is I was running nonprofits in all over California and internationally as well. And the deal that they don't tell you, that first when you go to school for this, they say, okay, you should make some PowerPoint presentations and some books to convince people of whatever it is that you're trying to do. That's all a bunch of nonsense. What you really should do, what it turns out, I didn't know this at the time, is you're trying to find, when you're leading a nonprofit, you're a fundraiser. And when you're raising funds, when you have no funds, when you have nothing to build the homeless women's shelter or the kids organization, the only currency you oftentimes do have is storytelling. And that's kind of how I came to story.
And for anyone who's ever heard the program, I think it's unmistakable the way that Detroit influences the work.
Yeah.
If I didn't know you and were listening to the program, I'd say that guy is probably from Detroit.
Yeah.
Talk about all the different ways that Detroit plays such a big role in the work.
When there's a vibe. I remember right before I left, I went to a slam poetry event here where the music, it was just so much flavor, so much, there's a rhythm to how Detroiters speak, there's a musicality to how we, conversations across ethnicities, across generations, and there's not just the music to the speech, there's a real music. Detroit has birthed so many sounds here. And I was wondering what it would be like to put all that into the same package. And my partner, he's from here as well. And it was good to have a soul who kind of saw things the way I did. We both were hearing the same thing.
Music plays a big role on Snap Judgement as well, and it's the music of Detroit that you favor, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah.
That's one of the markers too.
Yeah, and our biggest, probably one of our most viral stories that I think was really kind of a love letter to Detroit was a story about this guy Jeff Brubeck, who he was treasure hunting one day. He was looking at these if you could, the bins where you store, the sheds where you can store stuff, if you don't pay the bill, they let somebody come and bid on it. You only get a peek. There's a TV show about this now. You only get a peek and see what's inside. So he's decided to bid on this thing, and it turned out it was a storage shed for Jay Dilla. And Jay Dilla, the most profound, masterful beat maker in history, a Detroiter, he had his whole life's work in this storage shed, and this guy found it. It was one of the greatest finds in music history, of modern music history. And what he does with that, I think, was the story, I just love everything about it. It's so Detroit, it's so musical, it's so heart-moving, and you see how this guy decides, in the most Detroit fashion ever, to take care of his mama from beyond the grave.
Yeah. Talk about the way that you get people to tell these stories, sometimes with really intimate or difficult details. And I know that the journey that you've taken on the show with that also reflects a personal journey that you've had in terms of being able to talk frankly about difficult things or feelings or things that have happened in your past. I always feel like that's the most challenging part of the work.
Yeah. So for me, the stories that I end up telling, I start every show generally with a personal story. And the stories that seem to resonate the most are always the stories that I never want to tell. The stories where I'm not as brave or as heroic or whatever, I'm not being my best self. And we say in Snap a lot that the best storytelling comes from picking at scabs. And not wounds. Those are still, you can't get, don't wait till they scab up a little bit. Give yourself a little bit of time. But I had a very difficult upbringing here in the D that I get to explore on the show. A friend of mine recently asked me, she said, well, I don't understand why it is you're not crazy. I said, number one, I wouldn't make that assumption. And number two, I get counseling once a week on a national before 1.5 million of my closest friends, and it's true. It's very cathartic to sometimes tell these stories. And when we first were starting the show, I got to meet like my radio hero, Ira Glass, and he was giving me he broke it down, gave me some advice. He said, "Look, you're not gonna be moving anywhere for like 2 years. So I hope you've got some good personal stories, and I hope you've got some friends with some good personal stories." And thankfully, thanks to Detroit, I got both.
So you talk about that difficult background, and I know we don't have enough time to get into it, but you have a shorthand that you use to describe your childhood that always makes me laugh. Tell the folks here what you usually say.
Yep. Okay, so here it is. I'm just gonna let y'all know. As a storyteller, I'd say I learned stories the old-fashioned way. I was born into an end of days, apocalyptic, white supremacist Jesus cult. And if you say...
He's not kidding. He's not joking.
Yeah. You say, well, how did that happen? I don't know either. But if you say that Jesus is going to be here next week, and Jesus doesn't show up, you got some spanning to do. And watching these guys dance and keep those pews filled and keep that money coming in was an inadvertent education that I had for a long time I was really resentful of until I thought, you know what, maybe it's possible to use these tools in a different way. And the organization I grew up in was called the Worldwide Church of God. It was led by Herbert W. Armstrong. Like all good cults, It was based in California, but it had branches out here. This is what was funny was, it's Herbert W. Armstrong and everything like this, and I spent much time running away from this whole organization, running away from everything it stands for. And when I was first starting the show, I was in D.C., the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. They said, well, it's an interesting thing you're talking about, this multimedia, you're putting it all together in these different ways, and we want you to do all these things. Are there any examples that you can find of people who've done this? I was like, I don't know, maybe someone here can do that. Y'all have staff and resources. So they did. They researched people who had done something similar to what I was proposing that they paid for. And they came back with the paper saying there was this guy called Herbert W. Armstrong. And I almost lost my mind and went screaming from the room. But it just goes to show as far as you run, you're always right back where you started.
Yeah. And telling those stories about home, about history, about personal struggle, that's what makes all of those podcasts in your sort of category good. But there's something kind of different about Snap, I feel like. Even among the storytelling podcasts, it stands out. And you talked earlier about it's a little browner than some of the others. But I feel like there's something else, too, going on there. What else makes you guys different?
We have the staff of geniuses that work things out. We want to make the show feel like we just kind of stumbled in front of a microphone. But the truth of the matter is, 10 hours of interview becomes part of a 10-minute piece. Every single story has an original score behind it, done by this team of incredible musicians that just do the Lord's work each and every week. It's this amalgam of story and music and heart, and trying to find the rhythm in a person's story who maybe most of the people that we speak to would never get in front of a microphone without prompting, would never necessarily get in front of a stage. And we want to honor kind of where they're coming from and find a way to tell their story in a way that honors them. We're not a gotcha type of show. Here's the thing. Here's a real deal. Celia. When I first started Snap, I was kind of frustrated and angry. I was watching Crossfire. In Crossfire, you have two jackasses, and they yell at each other, and then the show's over.
I'm on a similar show here in Detroit.
But no one in the history of time has ever changed their mind from watching that show, ever. You've never changed or thought of a new way of seeing things from watching that show. But I know personally that people change their mind all the time from hearing a story. A story is like this, it's this clandestine way to get into somebody's head and make them see things from a different perspective, even when they don't realize it. And our show, in a lot of ways, is subversive. I do have an agenda. I say on every single show, this is not the news. And I say that in a joking way, but the truth of the matter is, I have a bias. And the bias is this, that it's hard to hate someone if you know their story. And the other bias is that the one thing that's missing from our national dialogue oftentimes is empathy and really getting into someone else's experience and wearing someone else's skin. The best way to do that is through narrative. And so what I love is if I were to say, let's have a debate over trans rights, well, people will scream and holler, and that's the end of it. Or they wouldn't let me on their air in the first place. But which was probably more likely, especially in today's polarized environment. But if I put a story about someone dealing with their trans sister or their two moms or however it may be, and that person just tells the story that they're living, I play these stories play in the deepest South. They play in red and blue, and I don't get phone calls saying, off with his head, because it's a story. And I can't be more, story, I really think is going to be the only thing that saves us, and we need some saving.
So you live in Oakland now.
Yeah.
Another city that is experiencing a tremendous amount of change, just like we are here in Detroit. Talk about what's going on in Oakland and how you kind of see echoes of your hometown in your current home.
Yeah, when I left Detroit 20 years ago, I went to Oakland. I was kidding, kind of, when I said nobody loves Oakland like somebody from Detroit. But when I remember first actually walking through Berkeley, and which is next door to Oakland, and saying, "Wait a minute, that's Shaky, a homeless person. That's Big Ricky. That's Slim. Why do I know all the homeless people in Berkeley, a place I've never been before?" Well, it's because one of the homeless policy that we had here in Michigan was a bus ticket, and we exported our issues to California. I literally could walk down the street in Berkeley and know people's names. Crazy. And so I felt like home in a lot of ways. But since then, I think Oakland has experienced a lot of the overheating of just the whole Silicon Valley area. We were talking earlier, one of the things that's really been problematic is that, from my perspective, the key to a vibrant arts culture is cheap rent. You gotta have cheap rent somewhere to have good art, almost invariably. And we've lost ours. We don't have cheap rent anymore. And of course, we're losing the artists. And I would hope that within the revitalization of Detroit, that there is a really conscious effort to maintain the spaces that allow art to flourish here. Because you have so many artists, so many storytellers that need to be part of the story that you're trying to tell right now.
Do you think about coming back to Detroit? Could we have Snap Judgement Midwest?
You know what? I think I'm going to definitely be doing shows here. I'm thinking about pulling myself out and taking these youngsters of mine. Maybe we just travel the world like the Kung Fu movie for a year or two. Maybe we'll just travel, see what we can get into. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't discussed this with their mother yet. I don't know about coming to back. I feel like in so many ways I haven't left. You will be surprised, but it's so crazy how on the West Coast you go into a room, like a big room of people, and you just start talking, and when people sort themselves out into groups, you find that you're standing next to people from Detroit just by accident. It just turns out this way all the time. In so many ways, I feel like I literally haven't left.
Yeah. What about the future of media? We've only got a couple minutes left, but you're on that cutting edge of the different way in which we all hear stories, for instance. Where is that headed?
This is really, really big. And I know that this is largely a developer community, but I want to make a pitch to the artists in the room. Right now, new media is on fire in a way that it's never been before. And I remember when I was first starting Snap, and I thought the best way to listen to one of our stories was in a sound room with a glass of port or something like that. But turns out, this act of putting in your headphones is a revolutionary act for storytelling as a medium. The minute you do this, I got you in a whole different way than I would if you're driving down the street yelling at the kids, slamming on the brakes. It's a different thing. It's transportive, it's an immersive medium, and it's just begun to be tapped. We're in inning one of the new sort of sound magicians and storytellers that are on the scene right now. And a lot of that is happening right here in Detroit right now. Shannon Kaysen is one of the storytellers here that I just think is fantastic. You just had a podcast festival in Detroit like 4 months ago, 5 months ago, right here in Detroit. these stories need to be told. And I don't know what it is about Detroiters that our stories seem to have a resonance that goes beyond our city, goes beyond our little thing that's going on here. We speak the King's English here in Detroit. We do. The cadence, the rhythms, it's not just us here. The rest of the country appreciates it as well. And when you're thinking about the future of this city, please find ways to incubate and to encourage these communities, because the art's coming from these things, and the businesses that I was just at a podcast festival in Florida. 4 years ago, there was maybe 500 people there. This year, there were over 3,000 people. It was sold out. It was past max capacity. And this is just part of the new media situation that's happened. And Detroit needs to have a really big role to play in where this goes.
All right. Well, it's good to see you, and it's good to see you home in Detroit.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks.